Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to a very special edition of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. On May 7th, 2024, the world lost a special man. We lost our friend, Jesse Scott. Jesse was a husband, a father of 3 young children, a brother, a friend, a professional wrestler, a wrestling promoter and company owner, and an overall positive force in this world. To me, he's Jesse, but publicly, wrestling fans know him as either JT Playa or the Lord of the Bling, Tiberious King. At the age of 43, Jesse lost an over-year-long battle with a rare form of cancer. We knew it was coming, but nothing could prepare us for losing our dear friend once the reality of the situation sunk in. This loss hit me particularly hard. I dearly wanted to write something for my friend. I wanted to write something so the world would know how amazing Jesse was as a man, as a dad, as a husband, as a wrestler. I've written things for fallen friends in the past, but this time I couldn't seem to bring myself to do it. No words I could write could fully capture what Jesse meant to me. If it wasn't for Jesse, I can honestly say that I wouldn't be where I am today. I have a job in the world of professional wrestling, my dream job, because of Jesse. He decided to start a wrestling school. And if I wouldn't have found Jesse and the merry band of misfits that joined that school, then under the guidance of Jesse, who started Fighting Spirit Pro Wrestling, I have no idea if I'd ever have made it in this wild world of wrestling. I got extremely close to my friend Jesse over the last 25 years. We shared the same dreams to make it in this world of wrestling together. We shared the ring together. We shared laughs together, tears together. In recent years, when we both became fathers, we shared the mutual goal of simply being the best fathers we could be. And near the end of his life, when Jesse gave his life to Jesus, we shared the mutual love of our Creator together. Before Jesse got really sick, we had plans for him to be a guest on this podcast. He wanted to tell the world his story about his journey in the wrestling world, and I wanted to help him do that. But unfortunately, as his sickness got worse, treatments increased, we never got the chance to sit down and record his story. It's one of my biggest regrets. But in the process of grieving the loss of my friend, I made a decision. I decided I still wanted to record his story, the parts that really mattered. Not the intricate details of each step that he made in wrestling. That's not the part that really matters. The part that matters is the effect that he had on people. Jesse, JT Playa, Tiberious King will be remembered for his limitless generosity of spirit, inspiring strength, extravagant humor, charismatic wrestling talent, and beautiful devotion to his family. Putting the effect of all of these things into words just isn't possible. All we can do is tell stories. So for the next 2 weeks, I've decided that's what we're going to do. For the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear from some people who love Jesse dearly. His friends, his fellow wrestlers, his students who he trained and mentored. And in doing so, we'll begin to unravel the legacy that Jesse's leaving behind. A legacy of love, generosity, charisma, strength, and faith that will never die. It's my hope that these special episodes will act as a tribute to Jesse. I hope it's something that his friends, his family, his wife, and his sons can come back and listen to so that they can feel how truly special their dad was, how special their husband was, and how special their friend was. This process has really helped in my grieving process. It's been a source of healing for me. It's my hope that those out there who are still grieving and healing from the loss of Jesse, that these episodes will be a source of healing for you as well. Today, we'll hear from 6 men. Some will be familiar to wrestling fans, especially those fans of Canadian independent wrestling. Others might not be as familiar, but before each guest, I'll give a quick little intro to each man to give a bit of context into who they are and their unique connection to Jesse. We're going to start with Andrew Davis. Andrew Davis is an Ontario indie wrestling veteran. Like me, he was Jesse's dear friend for many years. He had a special connection with Jesse because they're both devoted husbands and fathers. And also, like me, they also share the same faith in God. On top of all that, Andrew has a unique perspective on who Jesse was because Andrew was trained to wrestle by Jesse. So let's start with our first stories from our very first special guest, Andrew Davis.
All right, Andrew Davis.
Hi, Cody.
Hi, Andrew Davis. I'm hoping to get some Jesse stories.
Okay.
Some Jesse thoughts. Maybe not even thoughts. Maybe just some stories. Like anything at all. I know I have like a few like go-to Jesse stories. If somebody was like, "Hey, I never knew this guy. Who was he? Why is he important to you? Is there a story that you were like, oh, well, this story explains who Jesse is to me?" Do you have that? Or is it, because I have a hard time doing that because I have so many. I don't know if I have one, but I have like some, depending on who it is, whether it's like a close friend or like a stranger, of like, oh, I'll tell you this about this guy, and this tells you a little bit about the type of guy he was.
Right. So Jesse helped train me for wrestling. Mm-hmm. So one story like of how he would have impacted me would be, it was just me and him. So it was one-on-one session, and
Like nobody else even in the room.
Nobody else was there. And the way, whenever Jesse was training, like it wasn't always about wrestling. It was how wrestling affected everything. So the one thing I'm thinking of, it was he taught me or gave me superplexes. And if you know anything about me, you know that I don't want to be on the top rope ever.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So me and him, he says, we're going to do superplex day. And I just give him fear eyes.
Yeah.
And the whole lesson was just simply about, like, you can do anything you put your mind to. This might be scary, but you can do it. And that impacts not just wrestling, but life.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of a go-to how Jesse would have impacted my life story. Yeah. And I took so many superplexes that day.
Okay, so let's dive deeper in that, because I wasn't expecting this is such a perfect story, both because it encapsulates Jesse in many ways, but the name of my podcast is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, because wrestling is life. Right. And I know Jesse, I think also probably subconsciously, I was not thinking of Jesse when I named this podcast, but he was a lot like me, or I was a lot like him, or we had that similarity in that this isn't just wrestling. Like, you can learn so many life lessons through what we're doing, and you can also make wrestling better by incorporating real life into it. He was like that as a creative mind too. So that's a really cool story. I love that. Is there a moment in your life where you were like, oh, I used that lesson from Jesse? And maybe it was that one, the Superplex day, or maybe there was another one where you're like, something happened in your life where it made you think of Jesse and like, oh, I'm so grateful for that lesson or that thing. And it's maybe not like even a deep life lesson. It could even just be like a wrestling achievement or anything.
I think that happens a lot within wrestling, just because I am very introverted Like a large part of me doesn't like being in a Speedo in front of everybody. So how comfortable I've gotten in front of a crowd in a Speedo, I think of him for that reason. Like,
How did he get you to do that?
to do what?
To become comfortable doing that?
Well, I think that just comes over years of doing it, but I never would have done that. Like, he was the one who started the school. Without him, I'm not walking through those doors. So without him, I'm not.
Did you ever talk to him about like helping you come out of your shell? Like, did he talk to you about that specifically? Like, hey, you got to do this. You got to stop. You got to like get out of your shell. You have to do this more. Did he ever speak that directly, or did he always do that indirectly?
He would do it directly because he knew, like, in a car ride what I could be like, and he's like, we need to get this in front of people. It just took a long time for me to be comfortable to do that.
Yeah. So for those that aren't familiar with Andrew Davis, you have one of the best wrestling gimmicks ever, in that you're not just the best wrestler, you're the best dad, and you're Daddy Davis, and you have a diaper bag, and you do wonderful, awesome character things that I think the average person that doesn't know you personally would look at you and go, there's no way that that person is introverted because of the things that you're doing. I don't know the answer to this, even though we're friends. Did Jesse play a role in that character choice? Did he give you any ideas to that, or did he play anything, or if he didn't, I'm curious as to what his thoughts were on the gimmick that he said to you afterwards as your trainer.
Yeah, he did not. He wasn't a part of thinking of the character, but when he found out what I was doing, I would get some text messages saying, "Watching this, you should do this," or "Want to see this." Kind of ideas. So he would impart his Jesse wisdom into it. Yeah, for sure.
One thing I talked a lot about on this show is the importance of mentors. Is he your first wrestling mentor?
Yeah, probably. Like when I think of the three, or think of people who kind of train me, I think of three, really. I think of Danger Boy, TJ Hartley, and then him. I think, I don't know if there was one who I can say had the most, but those three would have been...
Yes. Yeah.
Had impact.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carm.
Maybe on a more personal level, and you don't have to answer this, and I don't even know how I would be able to answer this if you were to ask this to me. It may be a little bit tougher question, but like, when I think of Jesse, I think of more than just wrestling because of how important being a father was. Is there anything that you have done as a dad, not daddy character in the ring, but I guess an actual dad, that you do because of something that Jesse taught you, or the way that Jesse was as a dad, or anything related to Jesse? Is there something that rubbed off on you from Jesse and fatherhood?
I'm going to need a moment for that question.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said I think it's a difficult one. I don't even know, one, if I could answer it, and then two, how. So you can take as long as you need. Yeah. And you can also plead the fifth and not even answer it at all. And this doesn't even make the show.
Best show ever. Yeah, well, when I think of what the story I just told you about him, like me being on the top rope, that conversation comes up with my kids, because it's my daughter specifically. I see a lot of me, that like desire to get out there, but fear of falling or failing.
Yes.
And I have that, and I feel like there are things that I missed out on because I was too afraid or too introverted or didn't want to put myself out there. So I have those conversations with both kids way earlier than anyone had them with me. So I think I can think of that.
I love that. Yeah. There's been multiple times where I've said something like a life lesson to my kids, and then realized that oh, that was something that I talked to Jesse about, or that was something that I learned from Jesse. And Jesse wasn't my mentor. Like, we trained together, so his relationship with me was different in that he didn't train me, even though I wouldn't have been able to get into wrestling without him. He's the reason I got in, because he got screwed over by a scumbag and then started a wrestling school. So like, I wouldn't have been able to become a professional wrestler if it wasn't for Jesse. But like, we were very much like equals. It wasn't like a mentorship role. However, he was so he was dedicated to wrestling and had this passion for professional wrestling. He was like dedicated on a whole other level of being a good dad. So like, we would have conversations a lot about what the values that we wanted to instill in kids. And then I think a lot of those values and a lot of those lessons and ideas infiltrated my psyche as a dad even more so than I realized. Mm-hmm. And I think I've had time to think about that because of the situation and because Jesse's no longer with us. It's made me I was grateful for all those lessons as they were happening, but I think exponentially more. And I'm assuming that that's probably the same case for you, not just as a dad, but both as a dad and as a wrestler, having him as a mentor.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, like as a father, it's always in my head to just spend quality time with my kids.
Yeah,
and I mean, the last time I saw Jesse, we talked about how he wasn't in good shape at that time, and we talked about, like, that was probably the main thing we talked about was love and kids. And then he talked about how his kids, I don't think they totally understood. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I don't think they totally understood what was going on. So they would come home and want to play, and he just said it's the worst thing ever to not be able to. Yeah. So you, not that was a lesson, but it reinstilled that idea of like, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. If my kid says, "Want to go play catch?" Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I think I say this all the time, especially because my oldest, she's 12 now, and like, it seems like yesterday she was coming out of my wife's body, and like she was like, oh my gosh, like I remember that so vividly, and now she's 12. I'm like, where the hell did that time go? And then this Jesse's circumstance and Jesse's life and Jesse's everything that Jesse would talk to me about in the same one at the end definitely put that into even more of a perspective for me. In this exact same way. It's like tomorrow's not guaranteed, and also this time with these kids is so fleeting and is here one day, gone the next. And yeah, literally sometimes it's like, oh, daddy's running all these businesses, daddy's really busy. Oh, you want to play Frisbee? The answer is yes now. Yeah. The answer is always yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Next up is Jackson Jarvis. Jackson Jarvis is a former Ontario independent wrestler. Many fans remember him as the professional Jackson Jarvis. He was a dear friend of Jesse, but he'll be giving us a glimpse into who Jesse was as a young man, because Jarvis went to high school with Jesse, and he went on to train to be a wrestler alongside Jesse. So let's hear from our next guest, Jackson Jarvis.
All right, so I'm here with Jackson Jarvis, a.k.a. Ruben.
That's it.
Ruben. Yeah, so most people, I know you as Ruben, but I also know you as Jackson Jarvis. The wrestling world knows you as Jackson Jarvis, but I also know you as a very good friend of Jesse for a very, very long time. So I'm pulling people kind of aside from all walks of life. Well, mainly the wrestling life that Jesse led, but like I'm learning more and more as I talk to people. There's threads of other portions of his life that he has connected to people, and you're one of those people because you've known him for so long.
Absolutely.
So you immediately said you got two stories that you think you could share. I'm really excited.
I got two.
To hear them.
I think that segues nicely what you just said into specifically who Jesse was. Yeah. Jesse was Jesse before he was JT Playa, before he was Tiberious King, before he was Lord of the Bling, and I just happened to be kind of along for the ride before that and then after that, right? Where a lot of guys, his wrestling family only came in when he really became the charismatic pro wrestler that we know and love him for being. And I got to enjoy. I get the greedy, selfish enjoyment of a little bit of him before the public got him, right? Before the boys got him, man. Right? Yes. And so I got some of that young, unpolished, enthusiastic Jesse, right? That still, you could just see the light was bright. It was really bright, man. And this is not even that full blown story. Actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll go right into one of the two stories.
Okay, cool.
Because essentially, Jesse and I met in high school. So now I wasn't the guy that we were in the same town, very small town. And now I have another story. I think you mentioned this. So Diener didn't mention to me before we went live on the air here. Yeah. He said a lot of people suddenly just start thinking about different stories. Yeah. So once we get going. So small town Fort Erie, and in a small, relatively small community, pro wrestling fanatics stood out, right? And there weren't a lot of us. Yeah. And so we all knew who each other was. Right. Yes. The Carolyn brothers were two, and they were already slightly established in the indie scene. Okay. And Jesse made friends with them before me. Now, Jesse and I went to two different grade schools. Yep. So we weren't at the same grade school, but we were aware, I believe, of each other. Like, there's this guy at that school that likes wrestling. There's this guy at that school that likes wrestling, right? Yeah. Like, I'm talking openly liking, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of closet fans watched at home, right? But there were it was only a select few nuts that were like, I want to be a pro wrestler one day, right? Yes. And I'm sure you were one of them,
exactly,
right?
I was.
So, and you came from a small town, I know that. So you know the feeling, right? So in our small town, relatively small, Jesse was one of them, and so when we made it to high school, he's a year older than me. And when I got there, everybody's telling me, you got to meet Jesse. Like, he's just like you. He loves wrestling. And now the thing is, we're talking in the mid to late 90s, like probably 96-ish was when I hit high school. And Jesse was already there. And at that time, now you got to think, the internet was not a big thing then. It sucked, right? Like, it was like those slow lines that tick, 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 tick come down, right? And so back then, tapes were really where it was at for anything other than mainstream wrestling, right? So Jesse, lo and behold, later I learned, had this extensive collection of New Japan and ECW, just juicy tapes, right? Like the good stuff now in hindsight, right? Oh, yeah. But all I was spoon-fed was the shit.
You can swear.
Okay, the shit that I did, that was on TV, right? It was the stuff, it was WWF, it was the Godwins dumping buckets of slop on Doink the Clown, right? But that's all I had access to. Yeah. And I had a TV that had with antennas, and I could catch WCW on TBS once in a while, right? Like if the reception was good
as the weather was right, you got those rabbit ears turned the right way somehow.
So that was my, like, I'm coming in and just magazines, black and white magazines that showed some New Japan stuff. But Jesse he had enjoyed the mainstream stuff, but he had really sunk it in at that point to New Japan, ECW, everything else. Yeah. So there was a little bit of a divide, like almost like he looked at me as a mark of the mainstream stuff, and I looked at him as like this. Oh, that stuff's just violence. It's not really entertainment. It's not pro wrestling, right? Yep. And so not necessarily that we had bad blood. We met. Hey, what's up, man? But we just kept to ourselves. And eventually there was a battle of the bands at our school, and Jesse had this really close friend who was a musician. Okay. And so they were preparing for the show, not Jesse. Yeah. And the day of the show, and it was a big show in our school. Like, they put a big stage in
we had Battle of the Bands and stuff too in our community. Like, that's like
big stuff.
If you got to be in the Battle of the Bands, like, this is like your WrestleMania, your Madison Square Garden, like 100%. As a teenager, like getting to do this performance for everybody, it was a big deal. So I know exactly what you mean.
Everybody rallies behind it. It gets in the school. They put the posters up. They're talking about it on the radio. Oh, yeah. And so anyway, day of the show, the lead singer of the band was sick. And so I guess the band, like, they're like, what do we do? What do we do? Course, like he's down and out. Yeah. And so Jesse filled in for the lead singer, right? And just like...
So wait, pause. Yeah. Like, we can't just gloss over that, right? Like, this idea that, okay, I'll step in, Not like, oh yeah, I can slap a bass because I know how to play it. No, I will lead this group
I'm gonna
now
get the front
into
man.
battle.
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
be the front man
Absolutely.
of this performance now. All of a sudden on the day of.
If you go onto like Wikipedia and type in fearless, that should now instantly, the moment you upload this to the internet, that should instantly turn it like the answer to fearless
Yeah.
is I'm just gonna be the front man
Yeah.
on a band that I haven't practiced with before for a live event. Right, because that's to me that's absolutely just pure confidence, pure fearless, and fearlessness, and that was Jesse, right? Like really, like, and now up until that point, I hadn't really experienced that side of him. I had only seen him in passing in the halls. Now we're talking about like, you know, young, still got the baby fat, right? Both of us, right? He's got a pair. We both got these oval glass, like, you know, glass spectacle glasses. We're wearing sweater vests, but we're not the cool kind from the Mean Street Posse. Or like that, right? Like the mid '90s. Yeah. And so I just didn't. I didn't see that in him. Right.
Okay.
And so he steps up, and I'm just like, here we go. Like, here's this idiot that loves New Japan and ECW, right?
Like this is going to be this is going to bomb.
And I'm thinking like, now this will make me the wrestling hero of the school, you know, when he embarrasses himself. and he got up there, and I not only did he change my heart, he made me recognize. So he got up there and he slayed it, of course. Yeah. Right. He like annihilated it.
Yes.
Like probably better than the lead singer of the band would have done.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
And like just something out of a movie, right? And instantly there was just a complete change of heart. I was like, okay. I'm instantly a Jesse Scott fan.
Yep.
I need to be around his energy because I recognize and I see this man, like I was still young and I'm trying to figure out who I was. Sure. Where I want to be in life. I knew I wanted to be a pro wrestler, right? That was my goal. But just learning who you are, like he knew I could see every square inch of who Jesse Scott was. He knew it. There wasn't like anything in there that wasn't, he already didn't know who he was, where he wanted to be, what he wanted to do. He had the beautiful confidence that later on, when you met him and you guys rocked together and ran the indie scene, he had all that. He had, dude, I honestly think he's had that since day one. Like he was born, the doctor pulled him out and said, you know, Mrs. Scott.
That was a God-given gift.
Yeah.
It was just like, here you go. This is who you are.
Of light. Yeah. Like it was in there in him. And that was the moment that for me that I saw it. Him jumping around. I'm telling you, he was down on his knees. He was screaming. And it was Paranoid, Black Sabbath Paranoid.
Yeah, it was.
And he just, boom, destroyed it, kicking his shoes off. He kicked his fucking shoes off into the crowd. And at the end, he jumped out like off the stage, and people lost their shit.
Of course they did.
Like the whole place, the ceiling came, the roof came popped up, blew off, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And so from that moment on, I was like, I need to do whatever I can to befriend this man because he is one of those special human beings. And now I was young, so I'm not thinking this way, but I look back and I recognize that I did.
That's what you were feeling. Yes.
I was feeling.
Yeah, you were feeling that.
Okay, I instantly am a Jesse Scott fan, and I got to look past the fact that I don't watch New Japan. I don't do ECW. Yeah. I don't care because this guy gets it, and this is where I want to be. I want to be like a Jesse Scott. So to have that in high school from a man, he essentially became one of my idols, my heroes early on. Wow. And so, you know, he really, really, for another young man, to have an impact like that, from that point on, him and I became friends. We'd go to. He just took me right into his circle.
I find so interesting about that story, Ruben, is one of the things that's come up a lot in talking to his friends. The word confidence has come up a lot, but not just he had confidence. So many people have said, and myself included, he instilled confidence in me.
Yes,
like he made
100%.
Me feel confident as a person.
Yes.
So like how special he was as a man was, it's very rare in life do you find someone, there's a lot of people that are like charismatic and confident and like magnetic. You're like, oh, I want to be around that person. And like, but it's just, they just happen to be a charismatic person and they don't rub off on other people.
He was infectious.
Yes. And then not only was it infectious, he could somehow had this ability to, even though he was a confident person, he could just say something to you, do something for you, whatever it might have been. Sometimes it might have been have a match where you didn't realize you had this thing in you and he brought it out of you, or a conversation where you sit down with him.
Good chills right now. Listening to you talk about him like this.
Yes, he could he wasn't just a confident person. He could make you feel confident,
Yes.
make you feel
He wasn't-
like a superhero, like you.
Yeah.
Like he
wasn't
that's a
a-
very, very, very rare
Because
quality.
You're right. Because typically when somebody has that level of confidence,
Yeah.
they get a chip on their shoulder, I find.
And it's just them.
And
They-
it's them,
they-
right?
they-
And then
they
people,
hoard it.
They know people want to be around them.
Yeah.
But Jesse shared it. Jesse shared
He
it.
did.
He had it, and he would just as amazingly confident as he was in himself. If you wanted to be around him, and he was interested in you and what
Yes,
you
he
were
was.
doing, and he'd give you, like you said, tips like how to better yourself, especially in the world of pro wrestling, right? But like he shared, he was such a humble man
Yep.
that he's got this confidence, he's got this like enthusiasm, this light, this energy, and
But he's not hogging it for himself.
no, he's really just like spilling it out. And I think that at the funeral, the service recently,
Yes.
that there was a mention that, you know, and this goes back to high school too, because in his yearbook, I showed Jesse this at the end when he was to the very, very, very end.
Yeah.
I brought a yearbook by and I showed him his yearbook graduation picture with the write up that was included by him, and he said, "I want to be a pro wrestler, the greatest pro wrestler ever, and I want to run a wrestling school." And he did accomplish those things. And now at the service, when the pastor and people were speaking highly of him, and they said, you know, he could have made it, and he never made it all the way, right? Get that grand stage exposure, and he didn't. But it was because, and this was what was mentioned at the service, and it really, to me, it hit hard, it clicked, because his destiny, his path was, he wasn't that guy with the chip on the shoulder where he's that good and it's all about him. No. He was so good, and he spilled himself out and shared it with everybody else. And because of that, so many other people were inspired. So many other people were motivated, driven, and proved to themselves because he was willing to share who he was, right? It wasn't just about him. No. Now he wanted it.
Yeah.
But you know what he wanted more? Because it wasn't just in his blurb and his write-up for high school. It wasn't just, I want to be the greatest wrestler I ever was. That was enough. That was what I wanted to be in high school.
Yeah.
No, he said that, and he wanted to own a wrestling school too.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't just want to be that wasn't 100% his focus, being the greatest wrestler ever. It was
I
also
want to share this.
I want to share that at a young age, right?
Wow.
And so it's like he accomplished the greatest wrestler there ever was without needing that grand stage.
Yeah.
Right? He got that.
Yep.
Had he gotten to that stage, the world would have gotten to see what you and I know already,
right.
which is the man, and I said this too, I mentioned it at the service as well, that really I know The Rock. Like you look back on mainstream pro wrestling, you think the eras and the big players, right? The Hogans and then The Rock later, right?
Yep.
And John Cena or whatever. But yes, Rock is as a person of color. But I think that if Jesse had made it to the grand stage, Jesse is a confident black man. And he would have been the black version of Hulk Hogan. 100%.
I can see that.
Think
1,000%.
he had the same, just the electricity and the charisma of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Like not, and I was telling somebody else this recently, and it's not that he was putting his hand to his ear or anything like that, but just you can't look away when he was in the ring ever
right.
at him.
He had
right?
that thing.
You and he had that, and it's so rare, right?
Yeah.
And I think that had he made it, what he would have done for the African American community in pro wrestling would have been amazing. And it breaks my heart that he didn't, because I always, when I knew I wasn't going to make it, like early on, because I'm like, I'm not Jesse. I'm not, there's no fucking way. I'm not this guy.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah,
I'll do
yeah.
my best and I'll enjoy the ride.
Right.
But I just wanted to see him succeed because he wanted to see you succeed. So to me, and that was another little mention I was going to say, was that, you know, he made everybody smile. He just, contagious energy of laughter. And for me, so I did want to see him succeed. I really genuinely did. But the measure for me with him, if I could make Jesse smile or have a good laugh, like a belly laugh, to me, it felt so good because it really did feel, and this was also mentioned, and this was my thing, my heart was feeling it, but that I owed him a debt of a laughter debt, right? Because I felt like the guy made everybody else so happy and made you feel so good and made you laugh so much. Like the way he told the story, the way he could turn it on at any time. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, like let's blast it, brother. Like let's just get nuts. Let's do it, right?"
Yeah.
And like you just would go anything, you laughing your ass off.
Yeah.
And so when somebody has that energy and they have that just makes you smile.
Yeah.
I just felt like I owed him that
Yep.
back. And if you succeeded, if you could rib him or just make it pop. Like it felt so good, more than
I know
making
exactly what you're talking
the
about.
regular person laugh. Like if I
Yes.
can make regular people laugh, it's like, hey, I feel good about that. They think I'm funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. The king,
the
Tiberious King
I
thinks
know.
I'm funny.
Yes.
And like, damn, like
Yeah.
he got me 100 times belly laughs. I got him one, right? And it was worth it because like, and so that
I love that.
Right?
So I haven't shared this, and it just came to mind, and I want to share it with you. I'm really good at like staying in the moment. If I'm in the ring, like dropping into character, being in the moment, like no one can break me. There's only been a few times in my career where I've ever been broken and I'm uncontrollably laughing and I'm no longer in character. And one of those times it was Jesse
Absolutely,
Scott.
I'm not
we would get
surprised.
into the ring and we're supposed to do a promo. Like this isn't the only other times I've ever broken character. It's like, oh, nobody noticed because it was in the middle of a match, right?
Yeah.
And there's other people involved, so I can like hide it. This was in the middle of an in-ring promo, him versus me. In the middle of a promo, I break down. Now here's the best part. I break down laughing like schoolgirl, uncontrollable. I can't stop laughing. But then he did too.
Red face.
So
Oh,
now
he
there's
did too.
two guys that are in this
Pro wrestling match.
pro wrestling
People
match
paid to be
in a
there.
ring that's trying to hype this main event, and we're both opponents of each other, and we're both in the ring uncontrollably with a mic in our hands laughing.
That's amazing.
And it was like,
What a
it's
great
one of my
feeling, eh?
favorite things that I've ever had happen in wrestling is like, who cares about kayfabe? It was so funny.
Yeah.
And it was so ridiculous, and we're just in the ring laughing, and you're so right too, like to make him laugh. Here's how I'll put it, because I'm in the same boat. I've taken out so many withdrawals from that bank of like, withdrawal,
Yes.
and it's like, but if I can deposit something in there into that bank,
feels good.
right? Then you're like, oh yeah, it's good to be able to. I can deposit that check and try to give back to it.
That bank's not asking you for anything back.
No, it's
either.
not. It's never is. So if you can make a deposit, you're like, okay, that's sweet.
It really felt like dad, right? Dad's been busting his butt, taking care of you. And one day you just get to, every now and then you get to put a smile on dad's face. You get to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy because it's
So
like,
true.
here, I was just kids with him, right? But, it was those moments, they were rare, and you had to go to those extremes with him
Yes.
to really, because there was no boundaries with Jesse, right? He was never offended. People have mentioned that.
Yes.
Nothing offended
No
him.
boundaries in anything.
Yeah.
Like not just like sense of humor is a good like kind of microcosm of that. Like, and this is in a good way. No boundaries. And when we mean by that in a good way is like no boundaries in his creativity, his imagination.
Yes.
So that was you get that through his sense of humor. You'd realize this guy is like willing to like he can laugh at anything because has this unique ability to like, no, we can go there and it's still okay to go there.
Yeah.
So then he was like that in his wrestling, like, no, we can push those boundaries and like we can be creative and off the wall. And that's what part of his legacy within Neo is. From the very beginning, he was doing stuff in Neo and in wrestling that no one was doing at the time. He was so ahead of his time because he didn't have those boundaries. He was like that in his sense of humor, in his creativity, and then in his love. His love had no boundaries. He would yep, you can be my friend. You can be my friend. You're,
just such
anybody.
a rare
No
human
boundaries
being.
for his love, his creativity,
No.
his humor, nothing.
Yeah. And that's why, and he surrounded himself, like when we got together for the service a couple days ago, and you look around that room, and he's got people that love him from wrestling, right? The circus of us.
Yes.
He's got people that loved him as his friend, people that loved him as his family, people that loved him at work as coworkers, but not just like love, like when you
Not
and I
just an
die,
acquaintance,
it's like, hey, that guy was cool or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If we're lucky, right? Like, I love that guy, your family, right?
Yeah.
But like these people, the impact that he had on all of their lives, right? Because of that, because there was no boundaries, because he gave himself in his entirety in every walk of his life, everything, right?
Yes, I love that you were. I really appreciate your stories. I appreciate we were able to get some insight into the high school version of Jesse.
Yeah, for
and
sure,
all those
brother.
all the other facets. He was just such a special guy, and the more I talk to people, the more I realize how special he was. So all those stories just made me again realize all over again how special he was. I appreciate you sharing those stories.
Yeah,
man.
we got to do it. That's the thing with him is that's how his legacy stays alive.
That's right.
Is us sharing the Jesse that we all knew individually. We all have these little stories, and letting the world know those now. Like, as much as I want to keep them in, they're not my stories. They're not your stories. They're Jesse's stories, right? We just happen to be fortunate enough, blessed enough to be there in a moment of his light shining down on us, right? Like that energy. So thanks
100%.
for having me, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you, brother.
Next up is Ben McCulley. Ben is a professional wrestling personality. He's a radio host, a wrestling manager, and wrestling commentator for Rock Solid Wrestling. He's also a former pro wrestler, and every once in a while will still don the tights if need be. Ben worked alongside Jesse as they did color commentary together for Rock Solid Wrestling. And he'll give us a glimpse into Jesse's early wrestling career as he was on Jesse's very first wrestling tour out east many, many years ago. So let's hear from our next guest, Ben McCulley.
All right, Ben McCulley. How are you?
Mixed emotions on a night like this.
Yeah, I know. No kidding. It's I don't know, bittersweet, mixed emotions. But I'm just sitting down with some friends, both of mine and of Jesse's, and just asking for a story. I got some really good stories from a number of guys so far, and I have no expectations in that, oh, I need this to be funny, or I need this to be like sentimental, I need this to be anything. I believe in the power of story, and I think stories give us kind of insight into somebody, even if it's just one little trait or something about them. So when I just asked you, hey, do you have a story about Jesse? You very quickly said yes. So I'm curious what that story might be, or if there is more than one.
Well, Jesse represents full circle for me because I stepped in the ring with him for the first time 20 years ago.
Oh, that's right.
We were on the East Coast touring.
Oh, okay.
And
he talked so fondly of that tour when one battle story started to go around, any locker room, any like get together. That tour was like always a hit with his stories, and so
I just talked to Eric Young to promote this show, he mentioned that same tour, brought up Jesse right away. There obviously is like a everlasting, and you've been to the East Coast, you know that it's kind of got that magical.
Yes.
But that was a time, it was the last of the full-time touring. It was the full-time job. We were on the road 6 nights a week. That was what work was.
Yeah.
And so they brought in Jesse, and he was one of the Ontario guys that came in, and that was JT Playa full Afro days, and I had like double-digit amount of matches, so I like 10 matches.
Okay.
And they put us together because my gimmick was the patron saint of style, Vinny Glide.
Okay.
The disco dancing, womanizing, greasy piece of shit.
Yeah.
That worked well with his soul man kind of character, and so we had a dance-off. So it was my first match ever that was more than just a wrestling match.
Right.
There was pomp and pageantry added to it.
Yes.
And I was like, what are we doing here? I don't know what. I know my gimmick's disco dance, and he was just like, "Kid, this is gonna be fun. Just follow my lead. We're gonna dance. You're gonna jump me. I'm gonna kick your ass, and we're gonna go." And so I was like, 10 matches in front of the big East Coast crowds, and like we had this big like hit his music, hit my music, big dance off. The crowd didn't know what to think at first, and by the end of it, like he got so over.
Of course,
he's Jesse.
He's Jesse,
and so like I was jealous that his dance moves were better. Beat the crap out of him, and then put him over, and like got that 2 decades ago experience, and then why it's a full circle moment is like to reconnect with him, to work his shows at Neo, but specifically Rock Solid. Like I got into the business because of media, because of doing radio, television, and commentary. And then our television with Rock Solid, he's the fucking guy on the mic, right?
Yeah.
He's $1 million. So getting to sit with him on the commentary table for Rock Solid Wrestling 20 years after us doing a dance-off, and I was like, can you believe? And he was just like, full circle, baby. This is what it's all about.
Oh, man, I love that. That's... If you could sum up Jesse, this is a really hard question, and I want to say like in one word, but I'll give you more than one, like maybe 3. Like to you, because that's a special, unique scenario, wrestling with a guy so early in your career to influence you in ways that you probably don't even realize, and then to go through, sit down with him, be friends with him, work with him in those different capacities. I mean, your answer to this question is going to be different than mine, different than Andrew Davis's, different than Jake O'Reilly, different than Tyler Turva. Like, to you, like, what's Jesse mean in a word or two?
It's going to sound kind of lame, I think, but comfort blanket.
Ah.
He, like, back then,
Yes.
just put me at ease about, like, we're doing more than a wrestling match. We're putting on a skit here. We're going above and beyond. And he
Okay.
made it fun.
Yes.
He made me love it. There was no nerves, thanks to Jesse.
Yeah.
And then full circle, all those years later, sitting there, he just made commentary fun. He's the easiest guy to whiff off of and riff off of.
Mm-hmm.
He's the easiest guy to go back and forth with. And so in the ring, on the mic, he's making you have a great time. He's been the comfort blanket in the scenarios I've worked with him in.
So here's why I love that answer, because I never would have said that and used those words, but man, what a perfect analogy or word to use, because this show is called Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, because wrestling is life and life is wrestling, and there's so many connections between the two. And yes, Jesse was that to you in wrestling, but that also epitomizes Jesse in life, in that you could have any scenario. You could be at an awkward dinner party, and then Jesse joins, and it's automatically everyone's put at ease. He tells a story. It's like that positive energy that just enters the room you can't really explain. Yeah. It's just there. That was Jesse, both in wrestling, in the ring, at the commentary table, at a dinner party, at an after party with the boys. That was Jesse. He was that to me too.
Yeah. He's the stick that stirs the drink. Just brings it all together. Like, everything's gonna be okay. Play is here.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
Why? How could this be a bad time? No matter what.
It was impossible to have a bad time with him and impossible to have a bad match. Even though you're 10 matches in, I bet you it was probably the best match that you had up until that point in your career.
Absolutely.
And probably one of the most fond ones that you've had.
Oh, absolutely. Because there was dance moves in the match later on, trying to get my thunder back. It was a fun time, and I remember it was the first time I had a crowd reaction that loud.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Full circle. I love it. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our next guest is longtime professional wrestling veteran, Tornado. Tornado was a previous guest on the show. You can go back to episode 26 and 27 in the archives to listen to Tornado's story. He's the owner of Rock Solid Wrestling, and he was one of Jesse's very first colleagues and wrestled for Jesse's company over 25 years ago. And he's wrestled for Jesse and his various companies for over 2 decades. Let's hear from our next guest, Tornado.
All right, so I asked you, can you tell me a Jesse story? You immediately said yes, and I don't know if that's because you just love me so much and want to tell me stories, or if you actually have a Jesse story that you're like, I gotta tell you.
Of course,
you got one.
It's a personal one. It's
Okay.
a personal one.
Perfect.
So,
Good.
But you might remember this over the years. So me and him bonded over Conan the Barbarian.
Yes, okay. I forgot about that, but yeah.
And so we like the scene where Conan is on the beach, and the wizard's drawing on his face, and he's going, right? And you can imagine Jesse doing that, eh?
And just loving every second of it.
And then there's the other spot where Conan's on his horse, and the wizard comes out and he goes, who are the flowers for? And then Arnold goes, a girl. So I'd get phone calls, right? They go, hello? Girl! Jesse's yelling in my ear. Everything was this scene, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then he'd do like that was. Oh my God. He made me laugh. And so when we last saw him at Neo,
Yes.
he comes up to my ear and he goes, who are the flowers for? And I'm like, man, if that's the last thing I hear you say to me, I'm the happiest son of a bitch of all time.
Yes.
Because that's it right there.
So that epitomizes Jesse in a lot of ways. Everybody's saying, well, no matter what story they tell or what character trait they attribute to Jesse, one of the common themes is no matter what the scenario, no matter what situation, if he could put a smile on your face and make that situation positive, he would.
Oh yeah.
And that last time you'd have seen him. I mean, we can't visually depict him, but like, just to give people context, like he wasn't doing well, right? He's in a wheelchair. He's lost a lot of weight. Like you would think, oh my gosh, I don't want to bother that person. I don't want to like be a burden to them. But like in that scenario of him being very sick, very ill, not feeling well himself, goes fully out of his way to like, I gotta put a smile on my brother's face right now.
And he's got a gift for mimicry, right?
Yeah.
Like he could mimic these voices and then do whatever he was doing with his body, and they're like, oh my God, it's exactly,
Yes.
he could have been a stand-up comic.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
And so, and you'll remember this from when we went to his house.
Yeah.
And we were there, and for the 9-hour Jess party.
Yes.
And he gets out of his chair, and he started acting like, was it Giant Baba?
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop laughing, because he looked like him. He just mimicked his body style, everything.
Yeah.
It was just fantastic.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons, or one ways he got so good in wrestling so fast. Because like he could put himself in a scenario, become whatever he needed to become in that moment, and he could do it in a believable way. I got a personal one for you that made me think of this, and I won't share the full context of it, but similar. I went on a trip with him. We went on a houseboat with a bunch of wrestlers, and we all acted crazy like pirates for a weekend. Yeah. And my wife, who's a beautiful, wonderful Christian lady, Jesse had a way that he could say the most inappropriate thing and make you laugh, even though you're like, I shouldn't be laughing, but I'm going to. We aren't like that because we're wrestlers, because we're all crazy, but we'll do that. But my wife, not having necessarily that like crude wrestler humor, Jesse got her laughing so hard with this crazy, hilarious joke, which I'm not going to share.
I think I know the joke.
Okay,
I've heard it yelled many times.
But the punchline involves a John boat, because we're on this houseboat, and there was this boat, and there was this John boat. So like, anytime he brought up a John boat around my wife, it would just bring the smile to her face. Yeah. It would just make her just like completely change her body language. So we're at his baptism, and it was a very special day, and it was a very emotional day. And at his baptism, he gets baptized, and then we bring him to the front of the church, and like it felt like 100 people are surrounding him, praying for him, laying hands on him. Everyone's crying. He's crying. It's like this powerful, emotional moment that's like, because everybody knows what is meaningful about the moment, what's going to happen, and it's like, so it's like bittersweet because it's this beautiful moment. And I talk to Jesse, and I hug him, and I tell him how much I love him. And then I take a step back. I'm holding my daughter, and then my wife, she's in tears. It's emotional. She gives Jess this big hug, and she leans over, and I can't see Jesse. I can just see my wife's face. And then as I see my wife like crying and like trying to say something to Jesse, all of a sudden I just see my wife. Her expression goes from like this sorrow to like this giant smile, and she's belly laughing. And as soon as she comes over to me, I lean over and I go, let me guess. I go, John Boat? And she goes, John Boat. So in this moment, he's like, no, I'm putting a smile on your face, sweetheart, and you're going to remember this with the most fondness of emotion and memory. That was him, right?
And you know what? Right up to the end, right? What an example for his kids.
Yeah, that's true.
What a wonderful example of humanity, of not giving up, of pushing forward regardless of what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And goddamn, he's still giving back, right?
Yes.
Still giving back. It's wild.
Yes, giving back in every scenario, whether that's
us talking right now.
Well, exactly.
Forever, right?
Forever.
Like, just talk, like, and think of him every day, right?
Yeah. I didn't think a lot about legacy until the last couple months as I thought about Jesse. Like, I haven't thought about even that word or what that means to leave this legacy behind, and I've been thinking a lot about that since Jesse passed, and man, what a beautiful legacy that man leaves behind, both in the wrestling business, but with his family and as a man and in life. He'll live forever.
Part of our family. Like, we've known each other for 20 odd years. How many
right.
people can say that we like work together?
Wow, yeah.
Live together, drive together, you know, for 20 some odd years. For what? Like what? We're
Yes.
not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're doing it because we love it. That's
Yes.
it. There's no other reason.
Yeah, and you'll always have Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
My wife will, and that will always have the John boat,
Yeah.
and we'll always have a smile on her face because of Jesse. I love it.
100%.
Thank you, brother. I love you.
Thank you.
Our next guest is TJ Harley. TJ Harley is an Ontario independent wrestling veteran. He now wrestles regularly out in BC under the name Thelonious Jovinus Harlequin. He's a longtime friend of Jesse, was employed by Jesse early in Jesse's role as a wrestling promoter, and he also lived with Jesse for a time. Let's hear from our next guest, TJ Harley.
All right, so it's already on. If you hold it like here-ish.
Right here-ish.
Yeah, right here-ish. That should be good. You're number 2, I'm number 1.
I'm at mustache length.
All right, so Mike, TJ,
Hi.
whatever we call you. You're TJ to me, and you always will be.
Thanks.
I've been talking with a lot of people that Jesse was a very special person to, and people that were special to him. And people are sharing some stories, some thoughts, kind of whatever. And you're one of the guys I needed to make sure I want to talk to. So I don't know if you got a story, you got something you want to share, whatever it may be.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate having a moment.
Yeah.
I would say like chances. Like I would say like something where, you know, I was in a position where I was coming into myself as an entertainer and figuring out myself as a pro wrestler and like where I needed to be. And he saw that I like was putting energy into it and was like working really hard at trying to be what I thought I needed to be at that point. And he gave me kind of the spotlight a little bit at a time when maybe I didn't think even I deserved it. And put me over on Laz, which was kind of a huge, you know, it was a timing thing.
Yeah.
But it was a huge thing for me, and still to this day,
Yeah, man.
it was like a really special like thing, and I made sure like when I got to talk to him that I mentioned that and how special
awesome.
it was.
Yeah.
You know, for me as a as a young guy, and
Yeah.
just figuring myself out, to have someone have confidence in me was super special.
That sentiment and that quality of Jesse has come out multiple times as I've talked to people. But I think that's a really special one that you just shared because, I mean, I remember if I was to look at you, if an average wrestling fan would have looked at you, even those first chances that he gave you when you're coming down to the ring in a t-shirt and dragon pants and you like look like nothing. And the only reason this is, I can even say this because I was in the exact same position. I was about 50 pounds lighter than you and had red pants instead of dragon pants, but also wore a t-shirt and I was a nothing. I was a nobody.
Yeah.
But Jesse had this unique quality of looking at somebody and seeing a value there that others couldn't see, and then not just seeing it, but being able to like make you see it.
Yeah.
And then give you the confidence to then go do the thing that was going to make you the person you were going to become both in the ring and out of the ring. I don't know how he did it. He had this magical thing wizardry that he could do that like he could make you feel so good about yourself, even though, like you said, you didn't even think you deserve it. And like, why is this even happening? Jesse found that in people, and he was that to me too, man.
And in like a lot of the art that he enjoyed and that he liked to share with everybody around him and stuff, like you know, things that got him excited, and whether it was wrestling itself or like entertainment, like TV shows, movies, music, that he was, when he was super passionate about it, it made you super passionate about it. And like him being able to like feed off not feed off of the energy, but like tap in to like the wavelength of other people's energy, and then just accentuate it, put exclamation points on it without them even, you know, maybe even realizing it.
Yeah, man.
You know, that was a special thing about him.
It was 1,000%.
And I know that one thing that I've learned, I don't know if this is true for you, but like, I think part of his legacy is going. I mean, he has an amazing legacy, but I think one thing I've learned from talking with you and his friends and loved ones, that like, I know there's things that I do, and I've only realized this through this process of sitting down with his friends and my friends. There's things that I do in my wrestling career and in my life that I learned from him and got from him, and I didn't even realize it. And I'm even just realizing this now talking to you. I'm somebody that, like, I try to go out of my way to, like, try to see somebody, the value of somebody, despite what the appearance might be or the situation or whatever. And I think a part of that quality that I've subconsciously picked up from Jesse. And it's just one of the many things that I think is going to live on in his legacy. And I know that's deep, and but it's true, it's real, and I'm realizing it more and more as I'm talking to people, and I'm realizing it even just now talking to you.
Yeah, it's special.
And we're two dudes that probably wouldn't even have as strong of a bond as we do if it wasn't for Jesse.
100%.
Getting those opportunities together, riding down the roads, get our family that we have, and me like coming and picking up you and the boys in Cambridge in my minivan and going and doing shows. That was all because Jesse gave me an opportunity, saw value in me. Then I get to get connected with you. I get to get connected to EY. I get to connect to all these people, and I have this extended, beautiful family, all because of Jesse and you too.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like it's
100%.
really hard to even say how meaningful that is, but
special to be a part of.
It's very special to be a part of.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I love you.
Love you too, buddy.
Appreciate you, buddy. Our final guest today is Eric Young. Eric Young is a two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion, a former WWE superstar, a man who many wrestling fans are familiar with, but what many wrestling fans might not know is that EY was able to build a reputation for himself in the wrestling world partly due to Jesse Scott. Many of EY's early praised matches occurred under Jesse's wrestling company banner, Neo Spirit Pro Wrestling. Eric is someone who can give us a unique perspective into the man Jesse Scott because they lived together for over 2 years. Let's hear from our final guest today, Eric Young. All right. So I probably don't even need to introduce you because as soon as you start talking, everyone's going to know
that's a giveaway.
Who that giveaway is.
Yeah.
But I'm getting some Jesse stories or Jesse sharing, like anything. I'm just asking guys if they want to say something about Jesse.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of stories, and some are like funny, some are sweet and like tearjerkers. A lot of them are just laugh out loud Jesse stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just give you the floor if there's a story or anything that you might want to share.
I mean, I meant to do this earlier with you, so you've been doing it a lot, right? And I mean, is there anything to encapsulate it more? Is he was funny, he was amazing, he was the ultimate friend, the ultimate husband, right? Him passing, it can make you laugh 1 second because you're thinking about something funny he said or something he did, just with a look, or it makes you sad he's not here. We do this amazing show. We're at Niagara Falls, which basically is his hometown.
Hold that a little bit.
Basically his hometown, and like you'll never see him again. And that's hard to swallow, as a person that's 1 year younger than me, lived half of a life.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find, which I don't need to tell you this, but going through this podcast, like you said, it's going to be several episodes long, and there's not a person that has a single bad thing to say ever. I think you could scour the earth, and not find a person that has a single bad thing to say about him, and it's unfair.
Yeah.
And this week has been triumphant in some ways. It's been trying. It's been heart-wrenching. It's been jubilacious. It's been this weird, like, combination of, what's the word? A celebration of the person he was and this thing that he created here. This celebrating who he was as a friend, as a husband, as a father, as a as a wrestler, as an entertainer. He was, I mean, stealing a phrase from myself like a mark, but world class at all those things. A very singular human being.
Yes.
And I share, they're doing the doc thing, and I was sharing with them. And my wife might hear this because I know she listens to your podcast, because it's well done and it's insightful and it's thought provoking and all those things. And 2 of the best years of my life were spent living in this garbage apartment in Tennessee with them. We had a flipped over cardboard box for an end table and a couch that was falling apart, and these little junk rooms with light bulb, singular light bulbs, not a shade, mass crap all over the floor, nothing to eat. And I would say that those are 2 of the best years of my life, solely because I was sharing a life with one of my best friends. Every day was compelling. Every day was hilarious. He he could take any single mundane task and make it interesting. Cleaning the apartment, watching TV or playing video games or watching movies or talking about wrestling or watching wrestling. Everything was elevated because of his presence and because of his knowledge and overall his passion for all of those things. And me and you are very close. You're one of my best friends. My stance on religion. It's not for me, and I don't have any problem with anyone being religious. I'm not a religious person, but I have a code or things that guide me, and that's where most of my tattoos come from. And the one that's on top of my back says passion, because to me, there's nothing more important in life. Passion for life, passion for your partner, passion for your friends, passion for what you do. I mean, whether you work at McDonald's or you the fetch carts at Kroger or whatever it is, you should have passion for it. And I know those can be mundane things, but passion to me is the lifeblood. And I don't know if I've ever met a more passionate person than him.
Wow.
About everything that he did.
Agreed.
Every single thing. We're living in near poverty in this junk apartment in this terrible part of town in Nashville, and I would say it's 2 of the best years of my life. I couldn't go more than 20 minutes without crying from laughing so hard. And it was this weird dichotomy where at that point I'm really starting to get my foothold in the wrestling world. This will show, this is a story about him, but it's an eyesight into the kind of person that he is. So I'm getting my footing, and I'm really starting to come into my own. I'm selling merchandise like crazy. I'm on every show. I'm playing the crazy character, but I'm very over as a baby face. I'm on every house show. I'm on every pay-per-view.
This is the Don't Fire Eric era?
Yeah, okay. Right around then.
Okay.
And he's trying to break in and just not getting the break. And this business can be ferocious, vicious, And
that's why he lived with you. He was going down there.
He came to Nashville.
Get a break.
Yep. He was going to try to wrestle in and around Nashville, wrestle in the United States, start to get his name out there, and then be in the back door, meet Jeff, become friends with him, which he did. There were several chances where it got very close. And there was never... I also at the same time where I met Sarah, my wife, right around that time, right? Everything is kind of happening for me. I'm with this amazing person. I'm starting to make a little bit of money. I'm starting to travel all over the world and really get my stride. And he's almost going in reverse. He's alone. He's living with me. He doesn't have a significant other. He's having troubles finding bookings, and the bookings they don't want to pay him, and they stink. And he's just not getting any traction. He's kind of going in reverse. But never was resentful. Was never mad, was never upset. And if he was, I never saw it. If he was bothered by it, which I'm sure he was, you never seen it. And he never used that against me. He never, never became bitter about wrestling or about his lot or where he was. It's 2 people living completely different ends of the spectrum at that chase, even though we live in the same place.
Wow.
And that's the kind of person he was. It's just supportive. Come in the door and tell me what happened. What did you talk to Sting? Almost like my wife would, and is mesmerized by all of it. Wants to hear about everything that went on. And that to me encapsulates the kind of human that he is. Where I think most people would become spiteful. and maybe they don't do anything. You know, they don't act on it, but I never saw it with my eyes. I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. I never said, woe is me, or this, that, or the other. Wrestled independently all over Canada after that. Redid Neo Spirit, put it back on the map, started booking shows. People, this is a destination in Ontario. This is a destination in pro wrestling. This is one of the best indies in the world because of who he is and the principles that he tried to instill in the place and how he propped everyone up.
And the passion.
Going back to that. It goes back to that, right? It shined through in everything it is. And everybody that's here knows it's special, and they feel like part of it. Even the people that are doing these small duties, right? He would support them and prop them up in a way that you should. That's what a leader does. A good football coach, even the guy that's running down on the gun, on kickoffs. Good coaches make that guy feel like he's important. An average fan doesn't notice it. That guy makes a tackle, sticks him within the 10. That's an important play. The guy setting up the ring or putting out the chairs, or his wife doing the posters. She was telling me a story earlier of like, you're so good at it, and my God, like these are the best posters we ever had. Like, that's who he is.
Yes.
He wants everyone around him to be happy, whether it costs him or not.
Yeah.
And that to me encapsulates who he is.
And I think what's really special is, like you said earlier, even now in his passing, I'll have these moments that I'll cherish forever that make me laugh or cry or just feel something. He was such a powerful spirit of a person that I'm still reaping the benefits of the stories, his personality, his character, every fiber of his being is still like present with me, and will be, I think, forever. It will be,
right? And that's I said, like, I think I might be spiritual. I don't know what I am, but I believe the human body is so fleeting and frail, right? It's just this husk that comes and goes. But the spirit of somebody and someone's energy and their soul, that I don't think can be destroyed. And I don't know where it goes. I'm not worried about it. But I think it goes somewhere. And I think people like that, there's a special place, wherever that is, or wherever he decides that he wants to go, he's going to be accepted there because of the human being he was in this world. And 100%. What he did for other people is a rewarding to him because it's what he was passionate about. But all these other people benefited from his work and from his dream of doing this thing.
Yes.
Right? He started because he wanted to do it because it's rewarding. But in the end, hundreds and thousands of people are still and will continue to reap the benefits of that passion and that spirit and that energy that he poured into this place and poured into everything he did. He's just a very special person, man. And I don't, maybe people like that can't live past 43. Maybe they're not allowed. I don't know.
I know, right?
I can't explain it. You can't explain it. It's not explainable. And you go through the emotions of you're mad, and then you're sad, and then you're resentful, and then you're guilty. I'm sitting here thinking, like, I could name 20 people off the top of my head that should be in his place, me included. I don't have children counting on me. I've lived an amazing life. I could be gone tomorrow and be very happy. And I think he probably is happy too with what he did because he accomplished a lot in 43 years.
Yes, he did.
But it's unfair, and it's unfair. But life stinks sometimes. But I wouldn't trade those 43 for 75 of somebody else.
Yeah, buddy.
So special, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I just loved him. And I've also loved hearing everybody come and sit down and share something. It's been very therapeutic for me. It's been very helpful. And I know that all these stories that people are sharing, things they're saying about Jesse, are also going to be therapeutic and helpful, both for people that knew him and loved him, but people that have no idea who he is are now going to learn who he is, and they'll get to feel it.
Wish they did.
Yeah, they are.
They're gonna, and if they don't, then they don't. They're not looking at life the right way.
That's right. Yeah, man. He's a special guy. So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, as we paid tribute to our friend, Jesse Scott. Come back next week for our next tribute episode, as we'll hear from more friends of Jesse's and hear more stories that give us a glimpse into the amazing legacy that Jesse has left behind. In the meantime, continue to share your own Jesse stories with one another. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.